Good evening and welcome, friends. Let's talk about sex in the city. Tonight, my esteemed guest, Rabbi Mike, and I will be embarking on a myth busting mission, dissecting one of the most scandalized stories of all time, the saga of Sodom and Gomorrah. The misunderstandings that have grown around this tale have not only altered the course of history, but also shaped people's perception of homosexuality. Thank you for joining us as we delve into the narrative, challenging misconceptions and revealing the hidden truth behind centuries of interpretation. It's so good to see you, Rabbi Mike. Thank you for
Good,
joining us.
good to see you. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Thank you to everybody in the audience. We appreciate you being here. Everybody wants to talk about sex tonight, and we're going to get into it.
We're gonna
Um,
give it.
s- we're going to give it the old college try.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that we are completely missing the real message with the story that we're being given and fed from Christian rhetoric about Sodom and Gomorrah?
Well, I think I think it's fair to say that in today's world, in terms of when it's brought up, uh, the terminology, the name, it sparks a particular concept and idea, and
Right.
um, even the term sodomy, those sorts of things are built upon um, particular perspectives on this story. Um, and I think what's really important here is, people who know me and you know me,
Yep.
dissect stuff like this with the Jenga tower. So we're at the top of the Jenga tower, where Sodom and Gomorrah is has to do with homosexuality and is used just like the clobber passages in Leviticus. It's one of those tropes, things that are simple, that are used in conversations about homosexuality, and that's at the top there.
Mm,
Um, Tonight we're going to go low and we're going to start pulling those blocks out. And as we do that, in terms of following your questions and going into this this lesson, I think it's really important when we start to get into the scriptures, get into the verses, things like that, is that this is a this is a perception that is built entirely on what we call eisegesis. This is not There is nothing explicit within the story, within the Tanakh, that is specific and explicit about homosexuality being the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. In fact, as we will do later, a sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is said explicitly, and it is not homosexuality. And so the perception, the fight against that, um, as we see, will be really a journey of, this is what we want it to mean, and so we need to make it
right.
mean those things, which is just exegesis. Instead of exegesis, which is pulling it apart the correct way. Exegesis, you're stuck on an outside perspective, putting it into these verses,
Yes.
and you can't escape it. You're building your perception around it, and that's where we are at the top of the Jenga tower. Is something completely built on someone's eisegesis and perspective, and that tower built itself. And here we are, just sort of dealing with it.
Yeah. And we're going to start pulling out the foundations of that harmful belief because, as you said, that's not what is mentioned in that verse, but we do get told explicitly what the sin is in Ezekiel, which
Right.
we'll get to. Um, do
Yeah.
you want me to pull up the tweet that has gone really viral, I must
Oh.
say? I'll just I'll
um,
just I'll just
yeah,
pop it
that's
on up
fine.
there
I
so
mean,
our friends can see our
yeah,
little viral tweet here. No, but that's amazing because that breakdown, so many people loved it because it gave me new perceptions of things that I hadn't known, and even just little fascinating facts about when God refers to themselves as he, she, it, whatever, we can get
Right,
into
right.
that.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
but this tweet was amazing. And also it does have, if anybody's interested, not only does it have the English translation, but it has like the Hebrew there. Not that we expect you to read that, but just you can see where we're coming from.
Right. Again, what I try to do in all my lessons, especially in this one, is to give the full perspective of context, of the incident we're talking about, of the name that we're talking about, of the perception that we're talking about. And I have to say that this is something that is the idea of building a perception of something based on the context, is not a widely held Christian belief, um, because of most of Christian theology is built upon eisegesis of a this is what that line means. It has nothing to do with the context. It means this, right? This is what that's referring to, is inserting Jesus into Old Testament text and saying it's so obvious. How can you not see that? Well, it's not obvious, because you're ignoring the context. From a Jewish perspective and from a scholarship point of view, context is everything. And if we are
Right.
pulling one line or two lines or things like that, ripping it out of context and saying, see, this matches my hypothesis, that's just not good analysis. That's not good logic. Now, it makes for a good faith, but that is not, uh, that's something that I refer to really as, as Sunday school stuff. Eventually, you have to come to the adults table and recognize that there's more to this. And so tonight, what we'll do is we'll put that back into the context of things that you're just not taught,
Yeah.
uh, as a Christian, or even if you're not religious at all and you've just heard the term Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Um, because these Christian views have such an impact on society, even secular society. So,
Yes.
and if you've never learned this, there's a reason why you've never learned this, because it goes against the hypothesis that you're supposed to get the answers to, which is very hard, right? This productive discomfort. And so, in order to do that, right, you open up a concordance and you find out where Sodom is mentioned, right? You can find every single time that Sodom and Gomorrah are mentioned, right? Throughout the Torah, throughout the Tanakh, whatever it is, throughout the Old Testament, and find out what's being talked about it. Do these other passages match your hypothesis that it is about homosexuality? And the truth is, there is nothing anywhere, um, where Sodom and Gomorrah is mentioned to indicate that that is the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah anywhere. We will find out later as we're talking about that this is an idea that was simply implanted in, and then the concept is built around that. Um, and so while this seems like a very sort of simple idea that we should look at the context within something is written to understand what it is meant,
So simple.
um, that is not how particular faiths are built. The answer is there first, and then they go back and make it make sense, even if it doesn't make sense. It makes sense to you. Um, and I say this with great respect for all faiths, having been a rabbi, and like I see this as being done, but it's with an agenda, and the agenda is that you don't ask questions, that you just simply walk around with that answer at the top of the Jenga tower, and you don't look down, you don't look at those lower blocks. That's irrelevant to you, which is really a bummer, because what we do, when we're talking about this stuff, and what I do when I'm studying this stuff, is really fun and really fascinating. So,
I agree.
and I think that's much more fascinating to me than someone saying, "No, this is what it means." Like,
Right.
how do you know? Well, my
I prefer
preacher
to
told
understand it as the people it was
right,
written for would understand it. That to me would have more significance. At least I think that then maybe once I understood it as they did, maybe then I could reinterpret it for modern day. But
right,
just throwing homosexuality in there is just that's a curve. It's a curveball.
right. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the very, very beginning. But what we'll do is we'll throw away the eisegesis of homosexuality being the sin of Sodom, because there's nothing to say that. So we're just going to read it plain in the text and see what comes up. And this is how we should do really any biblical thing, is look at it without a outside agenda or outside view or whatever it is, as best as we can, looking at a text as best we can, not through a particular translation, not through a particular agenda, but just looking at the text, how it is written. We start that with the first time Sodom and Gomorrah is mentioned, and that's in Genesis 14, which is right there in that first tweet there. And it's just mentioned as like what's going on with the kings of it, right? Like this is the context that we see the first time we've heard of it, right? There's the king of Sodom, there's the king of Gomorrah. So we see that these are two cities with separate kings, or two areas with separate kings, right? And it's just one of many places: Admah, Zeboim, Bela, Zoar, right? That is involved in these battles, right? And here's these kings you've never heard of, right? King Chedorlaomer, right, of
Yes.
Elam,
Right.
King Title of. These are awesome names of these kings that are never mentioned, but they're not the point of the story within the Torah, which is no, focus on the Israelites, not these people. But this is what's going on, and they're like, okay, here they are, right? And then you read about in the next one, the king. Then it says the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah in their flight. So they're in battle and they're running away, right? Meaning the two kings, one of Sodom, one of Gomorrah, in their flight, threw themselves into
They're desperate.
right, into their enemies, right? And the rest escaped to the hill country, wherever that is. It doesn't say what that is, whatever it is. The invaders, whoever they were, seized all the wealth of both cities, all the provisions, and then went on their way. Done. It was a plunder of these two cities, like any other plunder, and peace out, right?
Right.
Why does that
Adios.
matter to the meta narrative of the Torah? Because Lot shows up there. That's all. So the Torah is giving us this, like, here's the setting where Sodom and Gomorrah are. It's one of many
Right.
kingdoms. It just had its ass kicked, and it just so happens that this guy who is attached to our story settles in one of the cities, right? Settles in
Okay.
Sodom. That's it. We got a great
That's
little
that.
context of what happened just before Lot shows up, and it's not good. So that's it. Okay.
Nothing too exciting other than men throwing themselves in
Right. The
desperation
fact
into.
that the kings were selfish cowards, and
They
the
left their people behind
they
and
left
booked
their
it. Is
people
that what they were
behind.
doing?
Right. So this is just really, that's
Very
like
manly.
a concept about patriarchy and monarchy, right? It's just like our kings threw them, gave up, and we had to escape. So I think like if you're reading this, like any other book, your question you're asking is like, why the heck did Lot come here to settle there? What a crappy story! What a bad place! What a dangerous place! A weak place with no king, because the king, threw himself out, and the people have run to the hill country. Maybe they've settled back in. It's not necessarily clear, but something matters about this particular city, I guess, that the author wants us to know, that this crappy city is where Lot ends up and settles. And the real question we should be asking is, why would Lot pick this particular kingdom? Why not all the other ones we just heard about? They're apparently not that far away. Maybe he would have attached himself to the plundering group that just went through and was just like, I'm with you guys. But instead shows up on the doorstep of the broken, poor, destroyed kingdom particular of Sodom, and decides to settle there.
Right.
So why? Why would this be the place? Like, what does that say about where he's going? Is it just on the way? About his character? Is this like he doesn't care, or is he there for a purpose? Has he been led there? We don't get to know any of that. There's nothing explicitly about that. Now, a teacher could tell you, here's why, right? Because blah, blah, blah. But reading the text gives us nothing but questions. Thanks for letting us know about how crappy this place is. Lot chose that place. Okay. Well, good to know.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for letting us
Good
know.
job.
Good job.
Nice
Right?
place for a family.
Right. Right. Nice place to raise a family on the way to, Canaan or whatever. But, and then, just like many stories within the Torah and the meta narrative, it breaks, and we get to hear a completely new story. We hear about Abram and Hagar, right? Sarai can't bear the child, so she gives birth to Ishmael. None of this has anything to do with Lot, nothing to do with Sodom and Gomorrah, nothing. Like, this is just, meanwhile, here's what's going on with Abram,
Yeah, there's always these like little breaks and like,
right.
okay, the story just
And this is,
cuts.
this is biblical writing. This is just like, setting the meta narrative theme, but like, we'll get back to you. I guess that's important. Sometimes they do, sometimes they
After
don't.
this break.
Right, exactly. We'll get back to Lot in a moment, but let's go over to, Abram over here, who had just found out his wife can't give birth. And so there's this whole story about, Isaac is born. These three men come to Abraham's tent. This is right after Abraham circumcises himself. So he's sitting out in his tent, healing, basically. Remember, he's like super old, right? So he's just circumcised himself. He's sitting out in the sun outside of the tent, just sort of like, okay, that sucked. And three people show up. That's the context of this, right? If you read it straight through, it's actually really funny. It's this great, powerful moment of being a part of your, of God's thing, whatever it is, but he slices it, and then he's got to go sit out and heal. There's no urgent care. There's no hospital. There's nothing, right? He's sitting outside his tent, just being like, whew, well, that was something.
Keep that little guy out of the sun.
Right, exactly. Get the guy in the sun, let him, whatever. And all of a sudden, at this moment, three guys show up, three strangers, right? They are not explicitly described as angels. That in itself is eisegesis at this part. They are simply identified throughout the Hebrew as people, as men, and or figures, and they show up as any stranger, right? And from here, we get to see an Israelite custom or a Near Eastern custom that if strangers come to your tent, you have an open tent and you welcome them into your home, right? Without even asking, who are you? Like, this is a symbol of intense, Israelite or Near Eastern hospitality. So, and we see this a great deal, that someone comes to your tent. And by the way, we see this in modern times too, right? If you go into the Holy Land and you end up at a Bedouin tent, they'll welcome you and they'll protect you with their lives. This is just a particular kind of desert dwelling sort of idea, and they welcome you, and then Abraham takes part in this ritual where he washes the feet of his strangers, right? This is like a Near Eastern culture that was not associated permanently through an Israelite or Judaism at all. We don't do that, but who does is our Muslim friends. They wash their feet before prayer.
Right. More of an Arab tradition.
It is. And so the questions we should ask are, what did these guys look like? How were they dressed? What was Abraham's intentions and cultural understanding that the right thing to do was to bathe their feet? These are really cool questions, right? We should not think that the right thing to do is when you see three angels, you wash angels' feet, because we never hear that again. And that's just ridiculous. Why would we know that? It's three strangers coming into a strange tent, welcomed with hospitality by Abraham. He's doing the right thing. And by the way, this idea of an open tent and hospitality goes straight to what it does lead to is the concept of a Jewish home and the chuppah when you get married, that it's an open tent of welcoming and hospitality and all that sort of stuff. This is Abraham showing the mentality of how to welcome people into your home. That's something that we've stuck with.
Right. So
So, yeah,
can I
please.
ask something quickly?
Of
Just
course,
about,
yeah. Always interrupt me because there's lots to talk about. So I'll keep talking.
so I'm thinking, and now as you were talking, I was just kind of realizing also, like, what kind of is this also kind of showing us what kind of man Abraham is? Because not only is he old, but he just rescued all of these people. I mean, not he wasn't the only one, but I mean, he goes
Right,
to basically rescue his nephew and all these people from Sodom and Gomorrah, returns everybody back. Now he's getting
right.
circumcised. Now he's welcoming people like strangers into his tent. Like they're kind of showing him to be like this really, I mean, in my opinion, maybe this really upright guy, like an example of how you're supposed to behave, of
Yeah,
sorts.
I mean that's not a unreasonable reaction to reading this kind of literature. This is a hero figure, a central figure to the story, and we're being told he's a good guy. So if you were to see that in a movie with no other concept, you'd be like, good guy. Got it. I should pay attention to him. That's it. Like, even if you don't know the whole story of Abram and Abraham and God's talking to him and blessing him, and like, if you tune in here and you see Abraham is washing these people's feet and welcomes them and feeds them, and you're like, okay, good dude. And then later you find out, hey, he's really important. And good thing he's a good dude. But that's what we should
Right.
take away. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I think that's a reasonable, logical perception that you can have while reading, right? And if you don't have that, ask yourself, is the way I'm feeling about this character, the situation, reasonable, or is something pushing me to feel a particular way?
Mm.
When you ask yourself that, you're able to say, no, someone told me that, but I don't see that here. Or I'm just going to give fresh eyes to this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so then, right, we see the connection of the stories, right? These three guys, again, who are not labeled as angels, have something to do with going down to Sodom, right? And we see that in the next stuff, right? Verse 17, we're talking about here, where now we get to a very strange and unique moment uh, between a deity and a patriarch and a hero, right? Pay attention to this. This is unique, and it's the first time we've seen it, and we have a good concept now of what kind of deity this is, and this idea of morality that we should be able to take. Now, verse 17, right? Um, we'll use Yahweh because we don't want to put Adonai or Jehovah or whatever the theological context is. We'll use Yahweh as a secular sort of plant here to use the unpronounceable name of God here. That is the
Okay.
Yud He Vav He. So it says in verse 17, the narrator tells us, now Yahweh had said, right? The Yahweh, whatever. Omer, he says to nobody in particular, should I hide from my guy Abraham what I'm about to do? Now, who's he talking to? Or who's it talking to? Who should, whatever. Put whatever pronoun you'd like onto God. Grammatically here, it's using male, but it doesn't have to be. But and it's easier to do that. But we can say the narrator is telling us is maybe this is God thinking. The verb in Hebrew is definitely more of a vocalization, but it has been used as sort of an inner thought or inner voice. But God is basically asking himself, should I do this or not?
Mhm.
Right? Not only
It's
that, should I
interesting.
keep something from a human being that I've built a relationship with? Now, why does someone do that? Why does someone or some deity have a moral dilemma, right? What is the reality here? And just as a logic observer, right? It looks like either this deity is embarrassed, is not
Mm,
sure how his or her hero patriarch is going to react, right? Abraham has devoted his life and future to this deity. Maybe this could ruin that relationship. Is this
right.
the best course of action for this relationship? That's what this particular deity, according to this um, story, is wrestling with, right? Should
Okay.
I hide from this guy what I'm about to do? Um, that is not
Hmm.
an omniscient being
Right.
uh, who knows everything, right? It is not a benevolent being who only does good things, because if you're only going to do good things, you don't ask yourself this,
Yeah.
right?
What would you
You care
hide?
about other people's feelings, and you might be right, and might be wrong. Um, am I going to upset this relationship? Right? That's not an omniscient being. That's someone who's taking a risk, right? So we're getting an interesting look into what the Genesis author uh, is creating in terms of this particular Genesis version of Yahweh. Um, since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. In other words, is this going to ruin the plan? Right? Is this going to ruin the reputation? Is it going to, Abraham's going to become this great people, and what if I screw this up? Am I going to be their god still? Like, really interesting stuff that
Yeah.
we don't get to hear about, right?
Mm-hmm. Nobody really questions that portion where God's wrestling with himself on what to do
Right,
and why would he even question his own thinking, right?
right. Why would that be something that this deity does? And we're focusing on this not because it's just interesting, but if we're going to talk about what occurs next within Sodom and Gomorrah, we should know what kind of God we're dealing with, what kind of feelings that God has, what's,
Where's his head
again, the
at?
context, right? Exactly. Where's his head's at, right? Where's Abraham's head at? What's the worry here, right? The story is much more complicated, right? So then we get to um, the next part, right? Where now they're called these people um,
These agents.
agents, right? Haftis pe sadikim rasha, right? Um, so these agents, right, went on while Abraham's standing in front of Yahweh, right? And does that mean that he's face to face with Yahweh, which we find later with Moses, who does it but says
Yeah.
nobody can? Or what does it mean for a person to stand before Yahweh? We don't know, but they're definitely in the same vicinity talking to each other. Well, we're not. We don't know if they're talking to each other. God is talking to himself. Abraham's just standing there, right? And Abraham, it says, Vayigash Abraham. Abraham comes forward from wherever and says to this deity, says to Yahweh, Tispei Tzaddik Im Rasha, will you sweep away, will you take away innocent people along with guilty people? Right? Again, how does Abraham know all of this? What's going to happen? He hears that there's a great sin of Sodom, right? Which we hear before. God says there's a great sin of Sodom. It's so grave. Um, and Abraham's not concerned about that. Abraham says, wait a minute. These are two big cities. Are you
Right.
telling me that every single person in that
Everybody gotta
city
go.
has committed that one sin? Clearly, no, because Abraham is saying, no, there are innocent people there. Will you sweep away the innocent with the guilty? Sure, there's guilty people there, but if you destroy the city, what about all those innocent people? It's a really good moral question, right? And I think the one that Yahweh was afraid of, because just before he's asking himself, this one might get me in trouble. Should I even tell Abraham I'm doing this?
Right.
Abraham is rightly concerned with the morality of this particular God. So he asks, will you sweep away the innocent with the guilty? And then starts to bargain, right? Now, these are huge cities. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. And he says, he starts low, but not too high, right? He starts in the middle, right? Let's just say 50. All right,
That's a good number.
Well, there's 50. You gonna wipe them out, or are you gonna say, you know what? If there's 50 people, no dice. You're not gonna do it, right? And
Right. What's the max here? What's the minimum?
exactly,
What are we
like
working with?
what Abraham is doing is gauging the morality of the deity he has pledged himself with, right? He is trying to figure out the mindset of, in these situations, what does my God do? Right? I've chosen this particular God of all the nations who have their only God, their God. This one's mine. Well, let's see how moral you are, man, because and he haggles down, right? And eventually he gets down to 10, right? And he
Right.
said, let my Lord, let not my Lord be angry, right? Basically, don't be angry, but I'm going to give one last shot. Hey,
What
I
about
know this
this?
is annoying. I know I'm being annoying, and you're God and all that stuff, but hear me out.
I gotta ask.
I gotta
I
ask.
got
I would
to.
be remiss if I didn't ask.
Let me put it
What
out
about
there.
10? Right. I'm going to put it out there.
That's
What
pretty
about 10?
brave to be
Yes.
haggling with God. I mean,
Right. And
honestly.
it is brave, but it also speaks to the relationship that this God has allowed his people to engage in, right? It's not a no question, um, you know, blind obedience. This particular God has nothing to do with that. He has a moment to hear. Maybe he will change his mind, right? Maybe
Right.
God's moral center can be pushed a little bit, right?
Mm.
Abraham tries. The verses could say God said no at 50, and that's it.
Yeah, he could have just said, I don't care.
He could have said, "Shut up, little human." What do you know, right? He could
Just
have
shut up.
answered,
I'd love that if God would have just said, just shut up.
"Shut up."
Just shut it. Zip
It
it.
could have been the same God that is written about in Job, where he literally says, "Where were you when I created the world?" Right?
Yeah.
Little arrogant dude. Like, I can do
Little
whatever
shit.
I want. That's
Right. When I
that's
laid
the
the
satire in
foundations.
Job, right? Where they say, who are you to question me, right? That's the whole idea of that God, right? And but that's not who this God is. This is a different author with a different perception of God, right? And so
Right.
he's like,
Right.
yeah, sure, let's hear it. Fine, 50, 40, whatever. Like, and then here's how it ends, right? Um, yeah. Like, I
He
guess,
didn't
fine.
promise no fire.
I don't want to be a one-trick pony, like
Right.
I don't be
Come on.
typecast,
How many times can you flood people? Like,
right, exactly.
please.
It's boring, right? Um, and so he ends on 10. He puts his last bet on 10. And the next verse is really telling. Um Vayelech Adonai, right? God is like, I'm done. Done talking. Doesn't say
That's
goodbye,
it.
doesn't say yes, doesn't say no. It's just like, I'm out of here,
I got to
right? And
skedaddle.
Abraham doesn't call after him. He just says, well, I gave it my best, turns, and goes back. That's it. That's
Sees what
all we get to
happens.
see. In between the lines is all speculation, right? Midrash or commentary, whatever it is like, what happened after 10? Why was that the last straw?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
interesting.
or did God, this particular God, just get so annoyed that he just walked away from the conversation? And it was just like, I'm finished. I'm done with you. Having finished speaking to Abraham, like, I'm done with you now. I'm leaving. And Abraham was like, well, all right then. Like,
Okay.
ten's the limit. Good.
That's that.
But also, we have to think to ourselves, God has sort of agreed here. If you find 10 innocent people there, I won't destroy it. That's where he will do that, right? Now, who gets to choose? Who gets to go look through these cities for 10 people? We know that
Right.
this God is not omniscient. So is Abraham going to do the work? Is Yahweh going to walk around and we're just going to trust that he didn't find 10? Like, it's very vague and
Are they going
frankly
to
unfair.
interview people?
Right, exactly. You're like, sir, would you destroy your own city for the sake of other people? Um, how do we know? What is the judgment here of, and what do we, let's get even more like sort of philosophical. What is the judgment of innocent versus guilty? Right? Did this guy step on someone's toe and you're like, well, that guy's a jerk? And did this guy, if you've seen The Good Place, like how hard it is to be good with all this bad all around you, right? What is innocent and guilty? And at this point, this particular deity decides, forget it. There's no way there's 10, and I'm gonna destroy them anyway. Like,
And
it's very
I'm
Jovian.
done.
It's just sort of like, you know what? Screw you. I'm just gonna do it anyway. I was wrestling with it. Now you annoyed me so much. I'm just gonna do it out of spite or whatever it is. Like, I'm just gonna destroy it.
Nice God.
Yeah. So we move on with the story. Abraham has given up, and these figures, which were called people, which were called agents, now they are called within the Hebrew messengers. And messengers are very different from people, right? Messengers could be divine messengers or just regular messengers, but they're there to bring something, a message, right? And we're starting to gather what that message might be, right? That this is divine and important. That these strangers have a message for Sodom, and we've got our reading should be like, I think we know what that message is, considering the argument that just happened. Something's
Right.
going to go down, right?
A little foreshadowing.
Right, exactly, right. Now, when we get to this part, remember what just happened when the three messengers, the three people, approach Abraham's tent. He welcomes them. He says, "Eat, stay. Let me wash your feet. Whatever." Now we see Lot doing the exact same thing, right? They come down and talk to Lot, and Lot says, "Hey, I know this place. Don't spend a night in the city. No Gouda. Stay with me instead." Right? Which
Right.
tells us two things. Lot is not in the city square. He's on the outside of the city, right? We don't know if it's a walled city or whatever it is, but he's not in the middle. And he says, don't go there. It's dangerous. Like, maybe Lot shares, like, you should hear what just happened. The king left, the people left. There's no gold. There's nothing there. Like, don't go into that city. It's not a good place.
Right.
I don't know what I'm
We don't
doing.
know what happened to what kind of city, if the city was left in ruins after what happened between all these kings came to be. So it could
Right.
be kind of every man for himself. And as you said in
Right.
your tweet, maybe this is where we saw the city turn to maybe behaving in the way we find.
Right. And again, we don't want to implant the end of
Right.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
story
Yeah.
too much, but I think what we should do from a rational point of view is say, okay, now we heard the history of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not good. They don't have leadership, they don't have money, and they don't have stuff. Their king abandoned them. And now Lot is telling us, don't go there. It's not a good place. So it's fair for us to say, okay, this is not a safe place. This is not a great place to go. It's not telling us that it's the most horrible place in the world. It's not telling us, that all it is gay people everywhere. It's not mentioned that anywhere. Um, the sin is not explicitly said, right? Yahweh here is just saying they're bad people, right? And it looks like they're dangerous. It looks like they're poor, desperate. There might be dangerous people, right? And so don't do that. And we're not told anything
Mm-hmm.
else. There's nothing sexual about this. There's nothing. We as
Right.
the reader just have to look and see, like, what are you trying to say? So he urges them strongly, and he says, "Don't go in there. Stay with me." And like any other Near Eastern open tent, he feeds them. They eat, right? And then here's where it all turns. And as I said, here's where it gets weird. Okay, this is weird.
I
Like
usually
this,
like weird.
yeah. This is
Weird's
where the
normally like my
story,
style, but this is maybe not
right?
my kind.
This is where the story gets weird. Okay, so they just ate in Lot's house, and they had just went to bed. Right? They're exhausted. They went to bed. We'll deal with it in the morning. When, and it says here, when the town council and the militia of Sodom. Now, uh, literally the men of Sodom. Militia is sort of a stretch, but um, Anashe Sodom means people of Sodom, the group of Sodom, right? Um, Insignificant and influential alike, the whole assembly, without exception, gathered about the house. This is a strange verse. It's a confusing verse. First of all, if it's everybody, why mention that the town council is there, the militia is there, people who are influential are there, people who are insignificant? Just say the whole assembly is there. Everyone's there.
Mm.
And we would know that. Why is the author telling us that the board of directors is there, the little army is there, the rich and the poor alike, the entire city has gathered about the house of Lot? Why? Why is this important? Right? Um, and how does this happen? Right? How does a city, or what's left of a city, thousands of people that have to be more than 50, right? Because we knew that before, gather about one house, right?
Mm.
Are what should be popping up into our head is a signal that this should not be a literal story. We are entering into the realm of expression, of hyperbole, of a story with a different kind of meaning, because an entire city gathering together to go to a particular person's house is
Right.
highly
Go
unrealistic.
knock on someone's door.
Right. And we don't get to hear, like, well, they've been talking, and what they do, ring a bell and say, strangers are here. Like, it doesn't make any rational, logical sense. We are entering something where, like, this is for emphasis, right? This is for a storytelling. This is good storytelling, but it's not meant to be made as literal. An entire city doesn't get up all at once, gather, and go to one house. We're about to find out what is the point of this, and it's
Mm-hmm.
important that we use our rational brains to do that, right? And they shouted. Who? In unison, the entire city,
All at
in
the
the
same
greatest
time.
example of collective minds ever, shouted the same thing. Where are the ones who came to you tonight? Bring them out, that we may be intimate with them. Who says that? The the town council? The militia?
Everybody
The
at
whole
once.
city? One dude? I mean, like, who decided this is what we're going to tell them, guys? Like,
They got a
this is
decree.
the
They
line.
had to
This is the line.
write this down.
Right. And it says something very weird, right? Why would an entire town that has just been decimated, is poor? There's a town council, there's a militia. and it just says Sodom, by the way, it doesn't say Gomorrah. Why would they come to a house? How would they know, first of all, that strangers are there, and that quickly between dinner and bed, that the entire city has gathered together, decided to go
Right.
and say free sex and go. Again, the literalist aspect of here is completely irrational and illogical. The message of "and they shouted" is like, who cares who? Like, here's the message, right? Where are the ones who came with you tonight? These new people, bring them out to us, that we may know them. Is literally that we may know them. The nada,
Right.
right? And if you've read um, all of that before Genesis, you know that nada, to know someone, means to know them, right?
Right.
We're going to really get to know them. That's what that means, and I think it's fair to put that in. Now, maybe, but that is a euphemism, right? It literally means to know, so it's a euphemism. So
Mm-hmm.
one, you can't put a literal thing on it. It's a euphemism. It's an idiomatic expression that we have decided to place in this, and maybe it's right, maybe it's not. Other commentators know that nada, and the root and the word, doesn't necessarily mean have sex. It could mean to know them and kill them, right? As we've seen in Judges 19:22, right? And this is what we
Oh,
do when we
yeah.
ask for what a word means. We look for it elsewhere, right? That's why we study the way we do. Is say, when it says Abraham knew Sarah, we got it. They had sex. When it says Gibeah, right? They set out to harm me. They gathered and they meant to kill me, right? And this looks, surprisingly similar to the Sodom story. And so, is it a parallel story of Genesis 19 and Judges 19? I would say possibly. And
Mm.
this particular author decided to make it much more clear. They didn't mean to have sex. They meant to come and kill me, right? And abuse my concubines or whatever it is, right? That wasn't
Right.
clear in
That's
Genesis
the one where
19.
they chop her apart and
Oh yeah, all good stuff. Yeah,
he
yeah. I
buried
mean,
her in
like,
different. Yeah,
right.
that was fun.
So let's just say that it is sexual behavior. Um, we're getting a nice view here into what is going on in the Near East. What's the neighborhood like? Lot's first reaction here. Um, his first reaction is, you know what? I got a couple messengers of God resting in my home here, and these people, this entire city, hundreds of thousands of people are outside the door, and they want to, get busy with them. What should I do? He doesn't call out to God. He doesn't ask the messengers to say anything you guys want to do right now. There's a angry mob outside my door. Anything you guys can do, maybe? No. His first reaction, and again, this is not a literalist thing. We're getting into a sort of fictional literary understanding. His first reaction is, "Hey, I got virgin daughters. Perfect solution.
Right.
He can do
That's how they
whatever. They can
solve
do whatever he
everything.
wants for them. Great
Property.
property, right? These are my virgin daughters. Sure, it will ruin them for marriage for the rest of their lives, according to Near Eastern culture, and they could get hurt and beaten and raped. But hey, at least they won't touch these guys, right? Now maybe we're starting to figure out why Sodom was a good place for Lot to hang out, because he's not a particularly good guy.
Maybe he fit in there
He
very
fit in,
well.
right? He seemed to have fit in, right? We also see that when Lot arrived, this did not happen. Because if it did happen to Lot, he would not still be there. And the virgin daughters would have already been raped, or he would have been raped, or what. Like, so this is a new occurrence where there are strangers. And then we find out, right, why the mob is there, right? Lot says, "Hey man, take my daughters, but don't do anything to the others, since I'm housing them as guests." In other words, hospitality. They're my
Mm.
guests in my home. I'm going to protect them with my life and my family's life. And here's where we hear again from the mob, right? They don't take this deal. They say, stand back, dude. This guy, and it's singular, by the way. I don't know why they stopped caring about the other one. Came here as an alien, right? As a foreigner. And here's where it gets important. And already he acts the ruler.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, the people of the mob have just given us the reason as to why they want to know these guys. It's not because they find them sexually attractive. It's not because 100,000 of them are gay. It's not because they're just evil people in general. Otherwise, they would have done all this shit to Lot, right? Lot didn't do anything.
Right. They had their opportunity. If that's what they were
Sure.
after, they've had plenty
Right.
of opportunity to do that.
And if Lot was like, this is a very rapey place, maybe I should peace out. Feeling a
Maybe
little
I
rapey
shouldn't
vibe
stay in
here,
the rapey place.
Right, exactly. I'm not going to stay in the rapey place. But that's not why the mob is there. The mob says, who does this guy think he is? Like, our king just ran away, right? Who's this guy? He doesn't even live here, right? He doesn't even go here. And
He didn't even go
he
here.
doesn't even go here. And already he's acting like he's
Bringing
going to rule over
strangers
them.
in.
Exactly.
Mm.
Who is this dude? Then they say, now we will deal worse with you than with them. In other words, if you protect this guy who's going to act a ruler on us, we're going to punish you, right? Now, look at the verbiage here, right? Hebrew, English, whatever. We will deal worse with you than with him. Let's go back to the idea that these are all gay people who want to know people. How do you how do you have sex with someone worse than you have sex with someone another way? Were they going to be gentle with the people, but Lot going to get rough, a little bit rough, a little
Coerce
S&M?
them nicely
Right.
versus take it? I don't think so.
Or if they are coming to rape and forcibly sexually abuse, how is one sexual abuse worse than another sexual abuse? Right? What does that mean? Right? We don't get to know. This is a situation where the author is giving us something that the reader at the time would understand that we have lost. Right? This is called cultural repertoire. The readers knew what was going on. We're not part of that culture. We don't understand what that means.
Something's been lost in the translation for us.
It's confusing. And if it's not confusing, then you've been told why it shouldn't be confusing to you. This is a confusing passage in the Torah. This does not make sense. It's all over the place. Why is Lot there? Why would he give up the daughters? What are they coming to do? Kill them, rape them, have sex with them? Is it all of them? Is it some of them? How did they know that the messenger was going to come take over? Right? We have lost a whole section of this thing. We don't get to see any of this. All we get is this little bit that the reader apparently back then was like, I got this. I know what they mean. You had to be
right.
There.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, it's one of those.
You just had to be there. And they pressed hard and moved forward to break the door. So now they're breaking down a door to know a particular fellow, to rape him or have sex with him or kill him. The whole people, right? As I said, I don't know what is worse homosexuality than forced homosexuality. I don't know. It doesn't sound good, but more likely when you say I'm going to deal with you worse than him, we're talking about a violent act, right? We're going to torture you. We're going to we were just going to rough this guy up or kill them quickly. we're going to be worse with you, right?
Yeah.
It sparks the idea, the logical idea of violence, not homosexuality, right? And by the way, Lot offers the daughters, and the mob doesn't say, "Dude, we don't swing that way. We want men." The mob says, "That's not what this is about. It's
Right.
about
You
that
could have had that.
that guy's a jerk. He's an arrogant jerk, and we don't want him ruling over us. So we don't want your
Mm,
daughters. We want him." They don't say, "Hey, the girls are nice, but they're not our type," right? So it doesn't have to do with a sexual preference of male versus female, right? Because of, someone throws two virgin daughters at you, who says no to that? I mean, like, you know,
no. What he's
no,
saying is that they were going to take it regardless. So what could be worse than them taking it? Like, and that's why I said, oh, what they were going to coerce them, and coercion is still rape. We're
right.
saying either way they were taking it. So how are you going to do worse to somebody?
No,
Sorry for
yeah,
the
no.
miscommunication there.
Sorry, I'm certainly not
Heck
equating.
no.
That's absurd. No,
No to the no.
uh, no. What I'm trying to do is um, sort of
Don't
pick
be sorry.
apart the idea is of when they say we will deal worse with you than with them. How does that work with what we're talking about? How does that work with the perceptions that we've been given from before? And it doesn't work, really. It doesn't work with anything, really, other than violence.
Yeah,
Because,
sadly.
um, you know, it just doesn't work that way. So, no.
Mm.
So, um, it really is a mob of violence, right? And so he moves to break the door. Um, so then, as this continues, we know that God destroys Sodom, and the meta narrative continues. There is, again, nothing explicitly said as to what the sin is. But if you were to look at this situation, your first thought should not be homosexuality for all the things that we've said, right?
Now looking at it, it's so far removed. I don't see it. All I see is men behaving badly.
Right,
Typical behavior is just men behaving badly
right,
is what I see.
right. These are not good people,
Right.
or wicked people, but it's possible they wanted to rape someone, male or female. It's possible that they wanted to kill someone.
Good
It
pun.
seems that they are without leadership and are afraid of a foreigner coming in to lead them. Maybe they're a little xenophobic, right? Um, and yeah, yeah,
The first
um,
rule in Sodom and Gomorrah Fight Club is you don't talk about it, which is why
right,
Lot couldn't tell anybody what was happening.
right. Also, where's Lot in this to be like, by the way, I know these people, they might come over and try to have sex with you. Tried with me, but I mean, like, this is just, it's
Right.
not good writing from a story point of view. It's just not a good story. It's not good writing. Um, and um, so we have an explanation as to what the, sort of an implication, a implicit understanding of who these people were. And we find that God destroys, um, yeah, of course you were, Logan. I mean,
A
a
lot of people.
lot of people were. That's why we're talking about this.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a shame.
right. But if you look at it from these eyes, I'm not trying to dismiss, the top of the tower where you're sitting in terms of this is the sin. If you've been told this is the sin, fine. But I want to suggest to you that what we've been given here should make your brain, something should not
Yeah.
work so well.
It's not the complete picture that Christianity has filled in all the gaps and told the story and made it, sound, back it up with all these other ideas and made it sound to be something. And now that we've read it, there's a lot lacking. There's a lot to be desired, and there's a lot that needs to be answered, quite
Right.
frankly.
Right. This is a story where we have missed out, and we're coming in on this story that is not good writing. And by the way, there's great writing in the Torah and there's crappy writing in the Torah. This is not great writing because we're lost. This is a story written to a specific narrow people who would get this, and it's been lost. So, thus it was, okay, when God destroys the city of the plain, whatever that means, and annihilated the cities where Lot dwelt. Now, we were told that Lot settled in Sodom, not in Gomorrah. We were told that they had different kings. We were told that the militia and town people of only Sodom came. What did Gomorrah do? Right? What's Gomorrah got to do with it?
And that's another whole question, is that city isn't even really mentioned. Doesn't seem they even had an opportunity to explain themselves. Are we supposed to assume that city also came to to Lot's
Right.
door in Sodom?
So 2 cities? Or
Right. 2 whole
are
cities
they
just
got up and was like, hey, Gomorrah, come on over here. And
we gotta go to this door.
Or are they
We're
like
selling
twin
chocolate.
sister cities? Like, I don't know. Where, obviously neither of them have kings or rulers. So I guess it's possible that they're all just lost or whatever. But this is why this isn't good writing. That the okay. I don't know what that means, but it sounds awesome. So we are not, again, this
Back
is
in
bad
1,000
writing.
years.
We've lost Gomorrah here. And so either we have to our rational brain should say, when all of a sudden, when they're referring to Sodom, they're referring to Sodom and Gomorrah, that it became one entity, or Gomorrah was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and was nearby Sodom, and God was like, screw them too. Either way, it's bad writing. So that's the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. I know it's already 7:30, if you have to go, that is fine, but take that with you, right? And that's the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, not that a bunch of people explicitly said, hey, these strangers, we're gay, they're not gay, let me go and have gay sex with them, forget the virgin daughters, that does not look right. Something your brain should say, where did this come from? The idea that homosexuality is the one sin, right?
We haven't
We'll
even
get to
been
that.
able to get to that part yet.
I know, because I keep talking. I'm sorry.
No, do not be sorry, but it's such a good question, because you
Right.
think of sodomy, you think of Sodom and Gomorrah. They've
Right.
got it synonymous,
Right. And Logan is speaking from the top of this Jenga tower. I
Yes.
heard Sodom means anal sex, right? Does that mean that it always had? The answer is no, of course. Someone within the tower made it mean anal intercourse, right? Later, and input that onto this, right? This particular word within society has survived that long. So, if that's all you take away from this learning session, you've taken a lot. I want to be respectful of people's time. We're going to go through some other sort of, here's where I can back up why homosexuality is not the sin of Sodom even more. Okay. Sodom isn't mentioned in the Torah until Deuteronomy 29:22. And from here on out, until Ezekiel, it's just talked about the destruction. Okay. So Moses is doing one of his big speeches. Deuteronomy is 4 speeches. He's doing one of them, and he's speaking of wickedness. Now, let's try the violent, wicked, horrible people, and then let's try homosexuality in this thing of what Moses is talking about. The vine from them is from Sodom, and the vineyards from Gomorrah. The grapes for them are poison, a bitter growth, their clusters. The vine is the venom of asps, the pitless poison of vipers. Does that scream to you in terms of a metaphor of these people are like Sodom and Gomorrah as gay? No.
No.
Does it seem like they're like, what would venomous, poisonous mean to you? It
Just
means they're not,
to me,
they're
not
bad,
good.
they're evil, that's
Bad.
not good,
Wicked.
right? It's
Bad
bitter,
behavior.
right? It's bad behavior, right? Um, again, does not speak to homosexuality there. And it's not like you can say, to ignore this. It's, that is not how you describe rape. It's not how you describe normal homosexuality. It's not how you describe um, knowing someone, right? It's referring to bad people in general, right? So then we get some prophets who continue to use this term of Sodom as something to be compared about, right? Um, so we're looking at the wickedness of the kings of Judah, the southern kingdoms, right? Because Isaiah is railing against how Judah is acting, right? Israel by this point has probably already fallen. Um, and the people of Judah, Israel is like not doing so well. So remember, we're talking about the Israelites now, the kingdom of Judah, Jews, okay?
Mm.
And Isaiah is saying, you're not good people. Here's how I'm going to tell you you're not good people. Had not the God of hosts left us some survivors, we should be like Sodom and another Gomorrah. Hear the word of God, you chieftains of Sodom. Give ear to your God's instruction, you folk of Gomorrah.
Damn.
Is Isaiah saying the
You're all
kingdom of Judah
homosexuals?
has turned gay? Right?
No. No.
No.
No.
No. Okay?
And when you put it like that, it just like I can't help but to laugh because that would just be stupid.
It is
Just be
laughable.
downright
It,
stupid.
it
It's
is
laughable.
absolutely laughable that someone would say,
You're
see,
being gay.
the entire group, the entire kingdom of Judah is gay. And that's what Isaiah is railing about. No, that is not what he's talking about. And then Isaiah tells us the solution to not be like Sodom and Gomorrah. 7 verses down, verse 17, right? One slide over.
Sorry,
Here's
my
how you're,
come on, there we go.
there you go. Here's how you're not going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Right here. Take it in, folks.
Pretty simple. It's
Learn to do good, devote yourselves to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. You don't want to be like Sodom and Gomorrah? Here's
look at
Isaiah's
this.
prescription.
So to
Right there.
me, it would be the opposite is what Sodom and Gomorrah would be doing. Like
Correct.
that to me would be like this is the polar opposite. They're doing this. I want you to do this.
Correct. That's a logical assumption that Isaiah is saying, you're acting like Sodom and Gomorrah. Here's what you should do instead. He doesn't say, guys, heterosexuality is the way to go. He doesn't say, go
Stop
to
kissing
conversion
men
therapy.
on the mouth.
Right? He doesn't. Right. Of course not. That's ridiculous. He says these people were evil in a particular way. Here's how to not be like them. Be a good person. Be a just person. Help people who have been hurt. Right? That's what he's saying. Pretty explicitly. Here's the opposite of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay?
The orphans, the widows, the people who
Right.
the have-nots. Help the
Right.
have-nots.
Jeremiah does the same thing, right? I don't have a slide for it, but Jeremiah deals with Sodom and Gomorrah also. He compares Jerusalem to Sodom, not because they're gay, but because they are dealing in false dealing, lying, and they encourage evildoers. They encourage wicked people. That does not mean gay. That does not mean that Jerusalem is full of gay people, right? It's absurd, right?
Is that
we have from the prophet? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just asking which. Oh, this is from
Yeah,
Judah. Is that
I
what the?
highlighted Isaiah again in the next slide, but I don't have the Sodom one, the Jeremiah one. I apologize.
Okay,
But you
no,
guys
that's
can
okay.
look.
He was just asking where that was.
Oh, okay. Let me, you know what? I can do that. I should have put that in there in terms of my teaching. Give me 1 second. I'll look it up. All right. So in Jeremiah, okay. We're talking about Jeremiah. So Jeremiah 23:14 is what we're talking about. Jeremiah 23:14. I'll read the whole verse, or the whole set of verses here. But what I see in the prophets of Jerusalem is something horrifying, Jeremiah says. Adultery and false dealing, they encourage evildoers so that no one turns back from his wickedness. To me, they are all like Sodom, and all its inhabitants like Gomorrah. There you go.
Right.
He even lists some things. Adultery, right?
But again,
But again,
no butt stuff.
not
No,
being gay,
not being
not
gay.
being
That's
gay.
not the problem.
That's not what's going on here, folks. He speaks about them again in 49:18. He speaks of them again in 50:40. And again, he's talking about it shall be like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah. He's saying, if you keep acting this way, remember what happened at Sodom and Gomorrah? That's what's going to happen to you. And by the way, the reason why Jeremiah is doing this, and it probably spooked people, is because the Assyrians had just completely plundered the northern kingdom, right, in 722. And Judah's the only one left. So,
Mm,
if you are under this understanding that everything gets plundered and destroyed because God
right.
lets you do that,
That's
he's
why the
saying, oh,
context
now.
is so
That's right. The historical context
important.
is just as important, right?
Right.
Judah is left alone after being destroyed
Hmm.
by the greatest power in the area, right? The Assyrians
Right.
have just destroyed Israel, and the prophets of the time are saying, "Hey, see what happened? You keep doing what you're doing, God will send the Babylonians or whoever it is to come do the same
Whoever.
thing."
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Isaiah and
Right.
Jeremiah are not saying you're too gay, God's going to
I'm
send
down.
Babylonia, right?
But
Oh, but we talked about
now,
that actually.
yes, and we've talked about this, but no, but now that you've put it like that and just kind of putting homosexuality in there, it just doesn't fit. It makes it so
Right.
it was a refreshing way to see the verses now that you've done that, and I appreciate that because it
Well,
does
I
not
want to,
make sense. It tells you right here we're talking about widows and orphans and helping the needy.
right. I want to put your concepts to the test and mine too, right? My concept from what I'm reading is that they're wicked people, right? That they're bad people. Um, that they probably, based on Judges 19, based on what we're hearing from Isaiah and Jeremiah, there's a particular kind of wickedness, mob mentality that is unacceptable. Um, and again, you have to take the literal aspect away. It's not like Isaiah is saying to Judah, don't go to the outsides of your city and find people and rape them or kill them. He's saying from the inside, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah were not morally good people. And you're starting to do things that are immoral. You're dealing in false dealings. You're not taking care of the widow and the orphan. You're not welcoming the stranger. You're not loving justice. The prophets are giving us more information as to what was the sin of Sodom, right? The prophets knew and are telling in their own teaching way, here's a way that you cannot be like them. So it's not explicit, but it's certainly a better case, I think, to be made than homosexuality, um, to the point of it being almost ridiculous when you put that concept to the test. Finally, I've got two more big things to talk about, and this is one of them. So stick around. Finally, in Ezekiel, a late prophet, apparently the readers of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Genesis are still unsure, right? It has not been made clear, right? What is the sin of Sodom? And this is again unique, I think. There is a need for these verses in Ezekiel, right? There's a reason why Ezekiel has to explicitly explain, right? He's not more clear than Isaiah and Jeremiah. There was a need at the time for an answer. And here's the answer we get. Okay, and I want you guys to pay attention to this. All right, Ezekiel says to Judah, here's what God says. God speaking through me, right? Sodom and her daughters, meaning a city is feminine and the inhabitants, right? Not just the women, right? Did not do what you guys did, right? You and your daughters did. And by the way, there's a very feminine idea, if you read others, of male and female relationships, of Israel is feminine and God's, and we're married and all this sort of whatever it is. But and that's why God is jealous. There's all kinds of stuff in the Torah and the Bible about this. But God is speaking in terms of a feminine understanding of like your peeps, right? And then here it is. Big block letters, folks. In the Bible, explicit, it's there. You can't deny it. Hine ze haya on. This one. Only this. Here it is. Hine ze. This is it. The sin of Sodom. Arrogance. Then Ezekiel goes on to explain how they were arrogant. Right? Because that's not enough. Arrogance. The people of Sodom had bread and peace. But at the same time, they did not take care of who? The poor, the needy, the orphan, the old, the blind. They did not live justly. It doesn't say this was one of the sins of Sodom. And we all know it's really homosexuality. It says, Hine ze haya on Sodom. This is it. That's right, Logan. It's not. Why would it be? It is a direct, explicit denouncement of that concept here by a prophet of God speaking from God. Here's your answer. I can't emphasize that more. I mean, this is your answer, guys. If you wanted it, here it is, right? He goes on. Your elder sister was Samaria, right? Lived to the north of you. Remember them, right? Your younger sister was Sodom, who lived to your daughters the south of you. Remember them? Did you not walk in their ways and practice the abominations? Meaning, did you not act like the people surrounding you instead of the people I made you to be? Right? Did you act like Samaria? Remember what happened to Samaria? Did you act like Sodom? Remember what happened to Sodom? Right? You were almost more corrupt than them, dude. You have completely screwed up. Right? Was Samaria super gay? No. Is Jerusalem and Judah super gay? No. Ezekiel is putting in words what we have thought all along, what Isaiah and Jeremiah almost explicitly hint to, what the Genesis story and the Judges story of Judges 19 show us about the mob mentality of a city, what Genesis tells us about what is left when kings abandon their places. They're become a poor nation of no gold, no stuff. They lived in peace. They had bread to share. They didn't. They were victims and they decided to become aggressors. The cycle of violence, right?
Right.
Instead of the opposite, where you have become the victim and thus you act the opposite way of your plunderer, right?
Right.
Um,
You
this
turn
is
into the
what it is.
a-hole.
That's right. You are continuing the cycle of violence. You're being not just. You're being arrogant. And a great way to describe all of these things is in hospitality,
Right.
right? What kind of hospitable place goes to the outskirts of its city and attacks strangers, right?
That's
Not a good
weird.
one. Not a good one. Um,
That's weird.
what kind of place has bread to share and peace, but there's still poor people, right? What kind of
Mm.
nation is the richest nation
Right.
in the world and still has homeless and poor people?
Who? But has
Who's
like
I don't know
all the
anyone who's
money
like that today.
directly to the
Right.
military and like
Exactly.
Cop City. Oh my.
Right.
Who
Who
could
would
that
who would
be? Who
ever
wants to build a wall? Who could that be?
wouldn't this be a much better sermon in church in America than railing
Maybe
against
changes the
homosexuality?
name. Oh,
Right?
yeah.
It's
No,
railing
because
against
we gotta.
capitalism. I mean, like, this is a,
It is really railing against capitalism. You're so
yeah,
right. That's exactly what it is. And I see the parallel between like the United States as it stands today, well, honestly, as it's always stood,
right.
and Sodom and Gomorrah. Not that I believe it to be a
That is
true
where we
story,
should
but
go.
whatever.
That is
Mm,
where we should go with this story. What is the
right,
nation that we're living in, or the nation that we know, or right? The original readers of this knew Samaria, knew Sodom, knew the stories, knew their neighbors, knew what happened. Ezekiel is being very clear. God is being very clear. This is not what we do. We're not like them. We're not like Samaria. We're not like Sodom. We're different. If we get attacked, we protect the needy. We don't turn angry. We don't turn it against people, right? You're failing
right.
me. You've done almost worse, Jeremiah said, right? You're failing what you're supposed to be doing. So, um, in the, I mentioned this quickly in my thread here. I mentioned Jewish commentators, right? Because if you want to get a Jewish view on Jewish texts, a good thing to do is consult Jewish commentaries. And I have to say, in general, when it comes to Midrash, Maimonides, all this other stuff, they're extremely clear. This makes sense. There's not a lot of commentary on it. It's not a mystery. Ezekiel cleared it up for them. It's
Right.
in hospitality. It's arrogance because it's right there, right? There are not any any like commentators that are like, oh, obviously it's gay people. And the one that I'll point out, if you the one at the bottom of your screen that says Pirkei Avot, Mishnah 2nd century CE, describes the sin of Sodom, right?
There we
So
go.
this is Pirkei Avot is the knowledge of our fathers, meaning like this book in the Mishnah, by the way, is amazing. It's just like one-liners of righteousness and how to be good. Like it's awesome. Pirkei Avot is incredible, and it's used to like base morality from a rabbinical point of view, 2nd century CE. And here's the rabbis, the sages of the time, after reading the entire Tanakh and knowing it backwards and forwards, bringing it to their own point. They say there are four types of character in human beings. One that says mine is mine and yours is yours. This is commonplace. Some say this is a Sodom type character. One that says mine is yours and yours is mine. Is an unlearned person, one that says mine is yours and yours is yours. Is a pious person. One that says mine is mine and yours is mine is a wicked person. They're literally using Sodom type to describe a kind of people, right? That's
Right.
the Jewish view. That's the Sodomite, Sodom type, right? Is morality in terms of hospitality, my stuff versus your stuff, mi casa, su
Right.
casa, right? One that says mine is
True.
mine and yours is yours. One that says mine is yours and yours is mine, right? That's being sodomy, a sodomite, right? You're in my place, you're mine, right? This is where the Jews stand on Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So all of it was clear. Nothing to do with homosexuality
Right.
until
Yeah. Until
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 it's mother
6th
effer.
century CE. We're talking about 400 years after the Mishnah and probably 1,000 years after the story.
Right.
6th century CE, right? Remember, 3rd century is when the church is really becoming its own sort of thing. 4th and 5th century, it's turning not so fun. Well, right. That's also true. And about
That's when they
1946, by the way, the 1940s and 50s is a great benchmark to have because that's the first time Catholics went back to look at the Hebrew after that long, after 2,000 years. They'd been using it
really.
until the
Wow.
1950s. They said,
Man.
hey, maybe we should look at the original text. Talk about arrogance. Anyway, 6th century
Right.
CE, a Christian emperor named Justinian Corpus Civilis, 559 CE, declares as a law that Sodom and sodomy means something different. This Christian influenced Emperor Justinian Corpus Civilis.
Is his name Justinian?
Yes,
Wait,
sorry,
didn't
his
he have
book
a
is
corpus?
Corpus Civilis.
Right, the court.
Sorry,
Right. Okay.
sorry.
No, don't
I
be
misspoke. Emperor
sorry.
Justinian's his Corpus Civilis, meaning his like
Book
here's
of
my rules for
rules,
society.
laws.
Right, exactly. No, that's not his name. I apologize. So here's his Corpus Civilis. Like here's how you're going to live under my rules. This is one guy. Okay, one dude. Yeah.
Is yours the JPP version?
The JPS.
The JPS. If
Yes.
is that what you mean, Logan? That has like the
Or
Hebrew with
or
the
did no? I think if he's speaking about Emperor Justinian, um, this is intently an agenda of some kind. And here's what we'll tell you. In his Corpus Civilis, which you can look up, he broadens the term for sodomy. This is the first time the term sodomite, sodomy occurs. We saw Sodom
Mhm.
type in the Mishnah, but this is where we get sodomy. Here's what he says it means: all sexual acts not related to procreation, and they're therefore counter nature. Now, that includes masturbation. It includes anal intercourse between male and female, right? Basically, if it doesn't get you more citizens, you don't do it. If you don't procreate, it's not allowed, right? Wasting your seed or whatever for masturbation or not going in the right avenue, uh, you know, whatever,
right tunnel.
right? Whatever the right, taking the left turn or whatever. You don't. That's not okay with Emperor Justinian. Um, for some reason,
Prude.
he bases yeah, for sure. He bases this law that he has written um, on this story of Sodom, which tells us a few things. Either he's not very smart and can't read the Bible.
Probably.
Either that, or more likely, he's an emperor and doesn't give a shit. This is what I want. This is what I think it means. Right? And here, you guys were asking, where does the term sodomy come from? Right here. The empire starts to, through law,
Motherfuckers.
state this is what sodomy means. The Christian empire expands, billions of people, including to America, it stuck with it. It became part of our verbal understanding of what does sodomy mean, right? Here's the etymology. You wanted the etymology, here it is. It became law. Now, if you're a law student and you read this law, you should say, what the crap did this come from? Where's the precedent? Where's the logic? This makes no sense. That's not what Sodom was about. Clearly, I can argue that. They didn't have lawyers back then arguing against emperors. The emperor said what was said, and there's the law.
Wow. Just like that.
So we're, by the way, about a quarter way up the Jenga tower. Okay? Now imagine the empire continuing this. Imagine church doctrine holding on to the idea of sexual acts not related to procreation. Hold on to that with church dogma rationalizing it, and keeping that word. And finally, when you get to the top, you see, holy moly, this thing has been built on. And then, right, what happens when you're at the top and you're saying, and someone tells you this is law, sodomy refers to homosexuality? You have to go back all the way down and read those verses with that in mind. You have to find homosexuality in the Bible, because the church guys can't be wrong, the priests can't be wrong, the emperor can't be wrong, history and tradition can't be wrong. I must be wrong. I don't see homosexuality in here. Faith, my friends, faith. No, it's complete bullshit. Okay? You have been made to feel this way because an emperor was, as Ryan said so beautifully, was a prude. So, and had this idea of sexual nature. And it stuck. And if you don't think stuff like that sticks, do research on the rest of our etymology of words and laws and things like that. I mean, stuff sticks, guys. I mean, you know, the reason why you don't have sorority houses in Boston is because of some interesting reasons, right? Things stick, okay? It's not at all unreasonable or unique to say that the term sodomy arises in the 6th century CE, and in 2023 we're still using the term. That's exactly what happens.
Yep.
Right. So, as I end the tweet storm that I gave on this, I will end it with you, and then we can go to questions or whatever if you want time. But 6 centuries where the idea turns. Now, who decided this is what it meant? Did the Bible decide what it meant? Did God decide what it meant? Did a rabbi or a sage or a commentator decide what it meant? Did priests and church doctrines and councils and dogma, whatever? None of that. A secular ruler who wanted his people to procreate and build a bigger empire made it illegal to have non-procreational sex. And he said, and he tagged Sodom.
And
even though we just read the case where that's nothing to do with Sodom, right?
But history repeats again, and we see that happening here in the States with an issue with repopulation. Population is kind of going down right now. I mean, the economy is really horrible, and people are choosing not to have babies in this kind of economic climate. And we see the government trying to force women to have these babies. in order to put people back into the meat market, back into capitalism, back into, clawing for breadcrumbs just to survive,
Okay.
which makes you very, when you don't have much for yourself, I can see where it makes you a little bit more, no, what's mine is mine. I can't afford to give
That's
anybody
right.
anything to anybody. But it's that cycle of violence you mentioned. It's really just, it keeps it going. And the parallels are mind-boggling to me that people don't see it. Like, I see it clear as day. Like, if y'all told me I was in the Matrix, I'd be like, yeah, I believe it. I got it. I found it. I figured it out. Can I get out now, please? Can I escape?
Right. And I think what you said was beautiful. I mean, the conversation about Sodom and Gomorrah has never been more relevant in our society, but not doing with homosexuality, but dealing with capitalism, power, money, reproductive health, reproductive choices, corruption.
Mhm.
It has never been more relevant. Why are people still associating it with homosexuality? Right?
Mm.
What a great oh, thank you. Um, why are people not why aren't there sermons across churches saying we are living in Sodom and Gomorrah, not because there are pride parades, but because there's corruption, there's capitalism, there's poor people in a rich nation, there's xenophobia with immigrants, there's
Mm.
reproductive health
Right.
violations, people want to procreate. These are great
Homelessness.
sermons and extremely relevant. Homosexuality has nothing to do with this. And so um, I will tell you that, throughout this time that we've been talking, um, I have not pushed anything. I have not twisted any words. I have not said anything complete like out of left field. I have simply shown you the text and the history. So all those people who commented, if you want to, throw things against the wall, read the comments on the thread that are from diehard Christians who cannot let go of the top of that Jenga tower and saying you're wrong. This is wrong, right? As if I'm so. And what did they call me? Like a wolf, right, or something like that? Like I'm,
Oh God, yeah. They love to just call you
right, that
names
I'm
ad
leading
hominem,
you astray, that I'm
left and freaking right.
right. I'm not doing any of that. I'm simply having you read the text. And there should be the warning sign to you that if
Yeah.
you read the text, if you teach the text and read the text, you're called a wolf. You're called a dangerous. You're called a false teacher. You're leading people astray. I just showed you the text. That's it. And I
Plain
showed
and
you history.
simple. No
So
eisegesis necessary. Thank you.
it's not a good argument for homosexuality. The only argument that they have
It
is
is
this is
not.
what it means. That's it. And you should hear some of the excuses that they say, right? That maybe Ezekiel meant other sins too, or whatever it is. Like, they're absurd. But they're only absurd if you read the text, right? As I say all the time, verses are not fortune cookies. The minute you pull something out and put it on a sign, you have ruined the book. You have ruined the context. You have ruined it. Who
Damn
put
it.
who puts a one-liner up with no context? How's that fair?
Who
Oh,
does
that's what
that?
that's supposed to mean? Says
Who does
who?
that?
Did you even read the book? That's not what it's talking
Right.
about, right?
And
Um,
we didn't even get to mention, there's, not that we're big Jesus fans, but to back it up, even Jesus mentions Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't remember what verses. I think it's in Matthew and in
right,
Luke. But he mentions Sodom and Gomorrah specifically about them being unwelcoming to people hearing his messages. So when his apostles, or whatever the hell you want to call them, disciples, are going out telling everybody the great news about Jesus, if they
right,
are unwelcoming, then you know what? They're going to be treated just like Sodom and Gomorrah was. Like, that's going to be their fate. And doesn't say they're going to be homosexuals.
right.
It just says that's not what it says. It says, if they're unwelcoming like they were, well, they're going to get their just desserts.
And I want to mention, since we're speaking about New Testament stuff, that yes, Paul and there's another one. There's another New Testament thing that talks about sexual immorality.
Mm.
It doesn't mention Sodom by name, but it talks about sexual immorality. And a
Okay.
lot of Christian literalists take those verses to support the idea of homosexuality of Sodom and Gomorrah. I think one even actually does mention Sodom by name and talks about sexual immorality. But if that is the case, and I think it is, if you're going to use that verse, that means you are saying that everything else up to that, including Ezekiel, is either ignored, replaced, outdated, or wrong, and Paul or whoever it is right. And your attitude should be, why? Why did this change? Where did this come from? But it's not. This is what the New Testament says. But if the New Testament is built upon the Old Testament, and if Sodom and Gomorrah happens in the Old Testament, shouldn't you read the Old Testament and get that explanation and be alert and be
Right.
like, maybe someone's trying to tell me something that's not really there? I mean, um, I don't have those verses in front of me because I'm not a New Testament expert, and I don't know it backwards and forwards like I do the Tanakh. But it does come up that there are verses within the New Testament that do ascribe sexual immorality, and by the way, just sexual immorality, doesn't say homosexuality, to Sodom. And so that's something to wrestle with in terms of, are you a Christian, or are you a Paulitian,
Pauline.
Pauline, um,
Pauline. I don't know.
right? Or is it Pollyanity or whatever it is?
Yeah,
Um,
Pollyanity. That probably.
and right, and why are you taking that verse and just saying this is it, right? Instead of saying what's the history of it, what's the discussion? Shouldn't we? This goes against everything we've read before, um, and try to figure out the details of that, right? Not many things are built in a vacuum. Um, Justinian probably had some sort of influence from Paul or the Gospels or whatever it is. But choices are made not for all righteous reasons. There's agenda, there's bias, there's corruption, there's political reasons, and we can't decide who is right and who is wrong and who is truthful and who is not based on a subjective idea like that. We should take everybody on one level, right? And that's, again, very hard to do in terms of biblical scholarship like this.
True. But I think when you just break it, if you just simply read it, I think that's the first step. Like if you're not
Read it.
sure, find out what which scripture is being referenced, and
Right.
then just simply read it on your own without the inference or whatever from whatever other scripture, or maybe even just what ideas have been fed to you about it, and just breaking down the scripture, the saga of Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it's not that much. I think it's from starts at like 14 and goes to 19. So
Yeah.
it's not that much, but I
Not
can
much.
see how like you start reading it and you're like, oh, okay, boy, there's a lot here. No wonder somebody had to sum it up for me, so I don't have to
Right.
do all this. But really, once you start reading it, it's pretty simple, and you're going to find out, oh yeah, there are bits and pieces missing. There's kind of ideas that just kind of stop, and then another one starts, and yeah, that happens from time to time. And like you said, sometimes the story writers maybe just weren't that good, or maybe the editors needed to take out bits and pieces to make it fit. Who's to say? But a good start is just looking at it for yourself, and so much will be revealed to you, truly.
Right. And I think that's a great summation in terms of this isn't that much study, right? I mean, yes, I study it for a living. And so to me, it's just another day. But for you, in terms of your life, in terms of whatever it is, the average Joe, whatever, or someone who's devout, Christian, Jew, whatever it is, This isn't that much. You read Genesis 14 to 19, you read that story, read Judges 19, read a couple verses in Isaiah, a couple verses in Jeremiah, and read Ezekiel. Once you got that down, you got the whole embodiment of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's it.
The picture's clear.
Yeah. And then you should figure out
for me.
Then you should figure out, why are they saying something else? Right? This isn't a radical idea. Reading the text and interpreting. It's not a radical thing. I'm not a false teacher and a wolf trying to lead you to love homosexuality. I'm telling you, Sodom and Gomorrah has nothing to do with homosexuality. There are plenty other things you can do if you don't like homosexuality. Leave this story alone, right? I can argue with you about the clobber passages too, which we have done, right? And about homosexuality in the Bible. But Sodom is a bad argument. It's a poor argument for being LGBTQIA. So leave it alone. And frankly, use it to describe our current world. And if it were up to me, Gen Z would change the etymology of sodomite to be like, corrupt capitalist politics, like you're being a sodomite.
I've thought about that. I would love to do that. I don't know how we make that happen, but I do feel like that it's unjust. It's been unjustly, I mean, okay, so they were bad people, whatever. If the city ever really existed, I don't know, whatever, say it did. But yeah, it does kind of bother me that we have like these ancient people just being sodomized by their own name.
Right. Exactly. We're all sodomizing each other. Like, whoa. Like
it kind of makes me sad that I don't know, but maybe it could have been a beautiful city that was just freaking arrogant and douchebaggery was happening.
Right.
And whatever happened to them, they went down under for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't really like how Christians do that to people groups in the Bible. Yeah. It really annoys the crap out of me.
I mean, all you have to do is go to Twitter and search Sodom and Gomorrah, and you're going to see a bunch of Christians railing against pride parades and saying we're living in Sodom and Gomorrah. It's laughable in terms of they've completely missed the point of the story. In fact, they are being sodomites by being unwelcoming to the stranger or to the foreigner or being xenophobic or the poor, the needy, like they're being sodomites. That's the irony is dead. I mean, it's just and so, I mean, I think there's so much opportunity for this story to be used in a good way. And there's lots of reasons on that Jenga tower like this, right? In terms of which translation you're using, who's teaching it to you.
People love the freaking KJV, and I do not get it. I don't get it. I just think it makes them sound smart. They think it makes them sound smart.
You don't sound like Shakespeare, dude. You sound like an idiot. Because that's not what the Bible says.
I shan't believe you.
Right. Thou art an asshole. Whatever we did our last thing together on Skeptic Haven, and the first thing we did was throw out KJV. Like we railed against KJV. So if people want to see that, come see us
please.
On an episode on Skeptic Haven, because the first thing we do is rail against just the absurdity of the KJV and why people cling to it, and it's just upsetting. So basically, now you're at the top of the Jenga tower, looking down and seeing how you got there. So I have now pulled out enough pieces that tower should, at the very least, look shaky, and at the most, be on the floor. On the floor.
I think at least the first few levels should have fallen, and now we just got to get the rest of it to fall, possibly. But I think we did some good damage. At least I hope so.
I love it.
Does anybody in the comments, was there anything that we didn't? I saw a few, but I think we kind of got to them as we were going. But if there was anything that we didn't quite tie up, please let us know.
People still even here? I mean, it's been 2 hours. Are you still even here? Or are we just talking to each other?
it says we have, well, it keeps going from like 30 to 31. Now it says
Oh,
29, but yeah, we've got a few people in here
good on
tonight.
you guys
I,
spending your Sunday night with us nerding out. That's awesome. Thank you.
I
Uh,
know.
good for you guys.
I know. Sometimes I feel so alone, like nobody really enjoys like digging through the verses and things like I do. And then here we go. We have a bunch
Here
of
we
people
are.
like, yeah, go ahead,
Listen,
read that to me. Read Ezekiel. Tell me.
you have found your people. Okay, if you're still sticking
I
around after
know, and
2
that's what I
hours,
love.
like you found your people. We're your people. You want us to talk for 2 hours about this? I got you. But yeah, I did see a couple questions, and if I didn't get to it, please ask again or point to us. I think there was one question that was about the name of God in terms of Elohim versus Yahweh. That is
Oh,
a much
I think that might
larger
have been
conversation.
Fern.
Yeah, that is a much larger conversation about different authorships and different views of God in terms of
Right.
Elohim is speaking about the pantheon, a pluralistic idea, and Yahweh is a different. But for now, it seems as though um, the Genesis writer of 14 through 19 is speaking from a Yahwistic point of view, not an Elohist point of view. Um, but again, we've got lessons on that too. So,
That's
just,
yeah, and that was a really good question, and I'm glad you because there are times where you can tell that it is from the Elohist because they are woven. They're
yes,
woven
they're woven together,
together.
but not
However,
well, not well
yeah,
all the time.
but
Yeah.
I don't know if people understand like the expanse of all the story books, excuse me, I should say,
Yeah.
that have been woven together by like basically schools of thought.
Hmm.
I thought all of Isaiah was written by Isaiah, and
Right.
now to find out, like, not necessarily so, and so
Yeah.
many other books just
Three
the
authors of
same.
Isaiah. Yeah. Um, that's a larger conversation in terms of ideological
Right.
overlay, um, differing authorship and canonization, which, by the way, oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, happy to talk about on another Sunday. Um, you know, uh, I don't know about that. Um, Here's what I'll say.
It goes
I
away
don't,
if you only have
I
a
don't,
limited.
I don't trust.
What if it goes bad if you don't use it?
I don't trust white Christian men to have a great understanding of anatomy. Is what I'll say about that.
Oh
Speaking as a
God,
man, I've
they don't
never heard
think
of
like
a
the
limited
clitoris is
supply
real.
of sperm, um, and why it's wasteful. Doesn't seem wasteful to anyone who's engaged in these idea actions.
It
Doesn't
seems
seem like a
wasteful
waste
to
of time
not
at all. Um,
enjoy it, right? You only
it's
get one
it's
ride.
it's a great pastime, frankly. So yeah, great question. Okay,
Yes.
so I would say let's give like if there's last burning questions. Um, they read
I've
commentary.
only seen Aaron Ron's stuff a few times. I need to Aaron, excuse me, Aaron Ra. I need to check
I
that
don't
out.
think
I don't know if I've seen that.
I don't think so. Please feel free. I mean, I'll watch some stuff and in terms of commentary. Obviously, I'm very skeptical of commentary, whether it's Jewish or Christian or whatever it is, because they come from a particular agenda and thought. The Jewish commentary comes from a Jewish theology, and that in itself is its own eisegesis. Yes, indeed. And then, and Christian commentary is the same way. It's faulted in a way that it comes from a particular theology and answers it from a particular kind of theology. So I use them as tools, but I don't view them alone. I put them next to scholarship and that sort of stuff. Um, Listen, great
Who
name for a
doesn't?
show. We're up for it. We're up for it. I do an
Yeah,
entire
hey,
lesson about sex in the text. I do an entire lesson on that. If you want to do it, I'm down. But let me tell you, lots of sex in the text. So, woot woot.
yeah, maybe we should have a show dedicated to like the euphemisms for like God's penis or
Yeah,
I
I
don't
got
know,
that.
whatever, any other time they might use a euphemism for stuff, maybe we could throw
Yeah,
that in there. But that would be a fun, I mean, since we talked about sex tonight, let's talk about sex some more.
yeah, man.
I'm good. I'm
Isaiah
good with that.
Isaiah definitely saw God's genitals. Is all I'm going to say. He definitely got a looky there.
Wow. So
So
can you look at God's genitals and live to see? I wonder.
there are there are good arguments as to panim panim, face to face, as to what that might actually mean. We'll get on that right now, folks. Um,
What?
you guys are coming up with all different kinds of terms that I am not familiar with. This is great, but I'm not familiar with that particular doctrine. And if there is a doctrine, please send it to me because
Right?
that's how.
Yeah.
And if not, we'll write it. So there you
Yeah,
go.
I would absolutely be down to.
Let's write it.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
thank you all, everybody, so much
yeah,
for
this was so
joining
much
in
fun.
and sticking around and asking questions. And I hope we got to everything. I think we did. You had a chance to ask if we didn't tie something up. So I
Yeah,
think so.
I
Oh no,
appreciate stuff.
we don't do soaking in the JWs. I don't think you guys do. You don't do soaking. That's just a Mormon thing, right? Where you just put it in and you just let it sit there.
Gross. Whoa. What is
Like,
wrong
what's
with
the
that? I thought,
point?
like, ugh,
Maybe they think there's a limited supply of sperm and you
that's
don't want
good.
to waste it.
Here's what I'll
Like,
tell you.
what good is your body if God only created you with a limited supply? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
Here's what I'll tell you, folks. Judaism is not supposed to be proselytizing, but you're supposed to have sex and a lot of sex in Judaism. Okay. Yeah, I was scared. Thank you. It is very scary what you guys are talking about because I come from a Jewish background. We were supposed to have sex a lot.
Get it
I
out.
and if you have it on Shabbat, it's a double mitzvah. It's like awesome. So
Oh,
sex on Friday
really?
night. Yep, sex on Friday night is like you did it. Awesome. Do it more.
Good
Uh,
job.
yeah.
God is watching.
How purity culture is all you guys. Okay, there's not a thing about purity culture in Judaism or shame or anything like that. Is all you guys. Enjoy it. The rest of us are going to get laid. Sorry. So
And that is an excellent way, I think, to end a show. I think we all should go get
go get laid.
laid.
Yeah.
We should better ejaculate than ejaculate.
I have to go. This is too much. This is like you guys are amazing. I would stay here all night just to hear these comments. I have other things to do. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. I had such a good time. I feel like I have a really solid foundation now, an understanding of the true sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is basically arrogant behavior, not caring about other people,
Right.
much like we see reflected in today's society in America. Thank you to the friends in the audience for joining us. Y'all are amazing. We'll get another show up and running soon. We'll get a little sexy texty going. And of course, Rabbi Mike, thank you for spending your Sunday night here with a bunch of weirdos
Hey, I fit
talking
in
about
great
loophole
with y'all.
loopholes. You certainly did. Is there anything that you want to tell our friends to go take a look at? Rabbi Mike has a book. The link is in the description, just in
Yep.
case anybody is interested. I have it. It's a great read, especially if you're somebody who is looking for a better connection, understanding of, when you're deconstructing. We have a lot of misconceptions, preconceived notions. I think just because of what we're taught about the Hebrew scriptures, Jewish people, maybe even in general. And I think this was a really good bridge for people. So, yeah, the link
Thank
is in
you.
the description if anybody's
Um,
interested. But is there anything you want to
yeah.
put out
No, I
there?
mean, I know you put my stuff in there. I'm very easily findable. The book is basically more of this for you, like breaking things down in a simple, rational way and showing you the other sides of things. And that's why I wrote it, because this is the kind of teacher that I am. I continue to do it on social media and these wonderful platforms that have me. Thank you so much. And so if you like this stuff, there's more of me, and go find it if you want. Yeah. Yes, Dan, he did. As a matter of fact, he showed
Come
his.
back to our sexty texty
We'll
stream
we'll talk
and
about
we
that.
can
Yes,
discuss
he
it.
did.
Yeah.
But y'all are like totally derailing us. Like it's just like we're trying to leave and we can't because you guys keep bringing up this stuff. It's amazing. But thank you so much. This was awesome. I love these opportunities that I get to be on these shows with you, Ryan. Thank you so much. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Fern. Thank you, guys. Any questions or any sort of update or things from this that weren't clear? People who know me as a teacher know that you are never bothering me. Email me, message me, find me on social media. I will answer your questions because I love to teach. So don't be shy. Reach out, connect, and if you have other questions, I'll help. I'll do my best. And thank you so much again for this. Good Lord, thank you so much for this venue. You guys are so awesome. I can't take it. I can't do it. These are lifelong friendships that I've been missing out on.
You found
This
your
is a great
people.
crew. It's a great crew. Okay. Good night.
All right, y'all. Good night. Thank
All.
you.
Thank you
We'll
so
see you
much.
soon, okay? Bye,
Okay.
y'all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.